Good morning.
Morning.
Hello, Dania. We
Good
also
morning.
have Juli. Hello, Juli.
Hello, teacher.
Nice to have you, girls. So, I'm writing down your names. Juli, Dania. I'm trying to call Laura. And we also have Freddy, but he's not here. Okay. I just write Laura with a parenthesis. So, this will be a septo or sept lesson. And the focus of this week was use of English. I am gonna divide this lesson into two parts. The first one is gonna be talking about a little bit of theory of language and what's expected from you in regards to use of English. And the second one is gonna be some practice. So we're gonna practice use of English just by talking and debating a little bit. So I'm gonna share my screen. 1 second. Okay, got it. So, use of English. So the way we think about use of English is by relating to what do we use language for. And so when we talk about the pedagogy behind English, we say that English is an instrument similar to a piano, a guitar, a violin. And so we can do some things from that instrument. What are some of the things that we can do from English if we think about it as an instrument? Well, it's an instrument that gives us the opportunity to talk about our ideas and to express our sentiments. And if we talk even to ourselves, we can relate some emotions. And the septo, originally the septo has only the computational part, that is reading and listening. However, with the UNED, you're gonna have use of English being measured in spoken word and also writing. So what are some of the things that are expected in regards to speaking and writing? First and foremost, logic. If I ask you a question, you're gonna tell me something. I'm not gonna put so much emphasis on the grammar behind what you say, behind what you write. If you use the present tense compared to the perfect tense, I'm not gonna look into that. But does that what you're saying make sense to me? Does that make sense? And that's the ultimate question that I want you to think about. Also, cohesion. Now, you are able to make logic out of your statements, but are you using the correct vocabulary to link your ideas? That is cohesion. And finally, vocabulary. This one isn't as important as the first two, because, well, you're talking to a human. So if you know how to play your cards well, you can make some mistakes, and if you do it correctly, well, with enough brain, let's say, we're not gonna notice those mistakes. Okay, that's it for the use of English. Now I have prepared set of questions that are often used in the speaking section of this section. Now, normally, these sections are prepared within a month of preparation, and some of the topics that are engaged for you to speak about are those that we see in the month. So, for example, if we are in October, you're probably going to talk about Halloween. If you're in December, you're probably going to talk about the holidays and Christmas and so on. So take that in mind. Put a lot of attention to what's the month where you had prepared the exam, and see what are some of the most popular holidays of that month. Well, in this case, we're in October. We're gonna talk about Halloween, and this has been used for the exam. Now, we're gonna see some images right here, and it says horror monsters. I want you to please give me 1 second, because this is supposed to scroll. No, it's not scrolling. Okay, so why do people find these monsters scary? You have to choose two. Now, before you do that, remember, you have to talk about that, but keep in mind that we're evaluating your use of English. So try to make your statement logic, use cohesion, and we'll use proper vocabulary. So let's start with Huli, please. So pick two and tell me why do people find these monsters scary? And choose the scariest two.
Okay. I think it's because the major people found scare, because for the image, maybe scars is maybe maskers is a scare and producing in the people scared, a little bit sad, negative emotions and negative feelings. And I think it controversial time and month, because this is a way opportunity for our children to go in order to enjoy and share with her or his partners, um, and enjoy this month or day. But in the watch and in the programs of TV, is a related with the produce terror or horror in the children and in the rest of the people. Um, I think for me the most awful image maybe is the monster, um, and scare,
The zombie?
yeah,
Or this one?
yeah,
Okay.
zombie, yes. And in my personal opinion, I don't like that any film related to horror films, and I prefer romantic and another. In my case, I don't watch any program that in related that horror movies or or the films. It's not good for me.
All right. That was very good. Let me examine some of your answers because, girls, I want you to take good note of what Huli just told us. And is, well, if you have the opportunity to talk about something that's not related to that specific topic, please talk about it because the more you talk about that, the bigger the score you're gonna get. So talk a lot. Relate things that you didn't initially imagine for that topic. For example, you can talk about death, phobias. Some people are scared about books or television, something that it was not considered initially. Also, Juli, particularly for you, uh, you talk with enough logic. That was good. Cohesion and your vocabulary, well, it was good, but not as good as it could be. Now, what I want you to put all your attention will be in intonation because you use the correct words, but uh, it seemed like you were talking about some other meanings. For example, you had the more preferences. You you said preferences, so that's gonna give you a lower score if you say that. The way you could improve that is just by watching YouTube videos or movies. Get acquainted with more real instances of the use of English. All right, and that was very good. Thank you. Now let's go ahead
Right.
and see the attempt or of do we have Laura? Yes, Laura, please go ahead.
Okay. Well, I respect that opinions about this topic, but in my case, I think that is many people have talked about that. So that is a reason that uh, many people find this kind monsters. And personally, I don't like that because um, I think that is not beautiful. Yeah, in some case, some movies or some songs or it's not beautiful. Um, and I don't know what to say about this. For example, um, in my case, I never see or I never participate about this day because I don't like. Uh,
Hmm.
so I propose this or say this about this question.
Okay, and how about the choose the two scariest characters?
Choose choose these characters.
Yes. Which two would you say are the scariest?
I think they're all correct. Smarter.
All right, and give me a reason for that.
Mm, because it's not normal. It's mm, yes, because it's normal. Like,
Okay, that's fine. So let's try to analyze your answer. You use good vocabulary, also you have good cohesion, but at some times the logic was not on point. You said that you didn't like it, but you should have reflected more on giving me reasons as to why you don't like it, and also it's important to stick to the question: why do people find these monsters scary? Initially you were talking about that, but then you carried away and you talk about yourself, which is good. It's good to talk about yourself, but uh, put the higher emphasis on the question itself. All right, you're gonna have some room to improve that right there after the coming questions, the next questions. All right, now Dania, please go ahead.
Well, I think that people tend to find these creatures scary because they are supposed to reflect parts of the human psychology that we don't usually explore on our everyday lives. Like we see reflection of other emotions more constantly, like romance, drama. We have the opportunity to reflect about history, but scary movies and scary monsters take us to places that we may not necessarily be comfortable, but can be interesting to investigate. Personally, I think that the most scary ones are Pennywise and Annabelle, and this is because you can relationate clowns and dolls to childhood, and when we are so innocent and new to the world, like everything has the ability to surprise us. So that's why when we tend to remember many years in the future movies that we saw when we were infants, we tend to remember them as something like really impactful. And when we have the opportunity to rewatch them when we are adults, sometimes we find that they are not as impactful as we believe them to be. So I think the more that we start at them, since they are supposed to reflect like images of our childhood, they tend to fall in the uncanny valley. And uncanny valley is a term defined to for objects and things that are supposed to look familiar, but the more that you look at them, the more unnatural they appear. For example, on 2019, the new version of the Lion King came out, and this is a perfect example of uncanny valley because even though the animation is supposed to look natural and it's supposed to mimic the reflections of the animals when the animals were speaking and singing, it simply didn't, like the expressions, the facial expressions didn't match what they were expressing because those are like inherently human, and animals express themselves in a different way. So I think the same thing happens with Annabelle and Pennywise. They're supposed to evoke something innocent, but the more that we look at it, the cute and fun part of the character tends to become creepier and creepier the more we stare at them. So it goes away from reality, and our mind disassociates the innocent, good image of these elements that we relationate with infancy and childhood, and they tend to look more scary the more we pay attention to them. Um, I have always loved Halloween and its imaginary. I think it is very interesting. Like not all the time we feel happy or we feel like trying to experiment romance. So I think that monsters and Halloween iconography allows us to explore other parts of human psyche. And the other thing is that I have always believed that this is the most fun holiday that have ever been created, even though the origins of it and the relation with religion can be a little bit controversial because um, in religion we tend to celebrate in Colombia specifically dead people with respect, and Halloween is making fun at some point of the dead, like it's trying to get away from it or hide from it or try to confuse it. And for example, in Mexico, Halloween is not celebrated in some parts of the country because they also celebrate Day of the Dead. That is another vision towards the same concept of escaping the death or embracing it. So I think that it is like really interesting. And like I said, the most scary for me, sorry, the scariest for me would be Pennywise and Annabelle.
Okay, that was wonderful. Thank you. Now I want to elaborate on your arguments, especially on your devices. So I'm gonna go back to the whiteboard. So you made wonderful examples talking about the uncanny valley, also the Day of the Dead culture in Colombia. That's amazing. And if you do that, you're gonna get the highest score possible in the CEPT. Now, girls, Juli and Laura, uh, some of the root of logic that you can take in order to make uh, an answer that is very similar to that of Dania's will be make a statement and after that make some explanation of that statement, and that's called the reasoning behind that. So, for example, statement. In Colombia, we think that if we celebrate this holiday, we're disrespecting our dead. The reasoning. Well, in Mexico, it's the opposite because they see this as a way of paying respect and so on. So statement, always follow that with the reasoning. That's gonna give a lot of logic to your speech. That was very good. Also, we have to take into consideration that even if we have very good ideas, some of us have better ideas when we think rather than when we speak. And those are in regards to when we're introverts or extroverts. My advice, if you're an introvert, forget about yourself. When you're talking, remember that you are teaching something to someone and you have something important to say. Forget about your pronunciation, your intonation, your vocabulary. You want to explain something and you're coming from the idea that that other person doesn't know something very important that you have to say. For example, the uncanny valley. You want to explain that because you think it's important to that topic. And when you portray that attention to the other people rather than yourself, you're gonna end up talking better. So we're gonna try to do that on the coming questions. Okay, let's talk about phobias. So why do people suffer from these phobias? And we have some images. Which two do you think are the most debilitating? Now let's start with Juli.
Okay, why do people suffer from these phobias? I think is mm, because the major people is or the each people uh, have different phobias in the different maybe is a I consider is the the scared when it's possible in this childhood um, um, maybe for that for some reason of in her or his life maybe that any person have to phobias um, I think it's mm, I think the most debilitated of the people is spider, phobia spider, um, because because for that spider mm, is a awful animal. In some occasion, the people don't like that animal, and it's that it and I think in the major of the towns you can see or found that spiders. For that reason, maybe in the child when I was a child or war, it's possible to 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 find to find out that your phobia is possible is uh, go to of the infants and the here time in the life. Um, I think the dark is possible is to a phobia popular because for the dark is like a situation that the people feel like isolation or alone and it's a possibility that the most the most people don't like or don't permit feel that 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 phobias.
Okay, thank you. That was very good also. Now, and this time, it was much better the formula of statement and argument. Let me write it down. And then follow that with an argument. That was much better. Thank you. Also, before we continue, keep in mind the positive constructions. On my previous class, it was writing. I had Dania and Laura when we were talking about positive constructions. So, whenever we have, for example, if we want to say, I don't know, if you say, I don't know, well, that's gonna give us a bad impression of you. Instead, you could say, you still be honest if you want. You can say, it's confusing, or some people think this is confusing. So you notice the change? I don't know. No. Huli didn't say that, but is something that I want you to keep in mind in these positive constructions versus confusing. right out of the bat, when we say confusing, it's gonna give us a complete opposite opinion instead of when you say, I don't know. So keep that in mind. All right, let's go ahead and go with Laura.
Okay. I think that many people suffer from the from phobia because when was a child, suffer different suffer difficult situation, and or or your friends or his or her friends was bad with her or with his one. Um, and another reason that that I think that many people suffer phobias is um, well, remember because they remember bad moments or bad situations or bad experience, and when they remember that, for example, in some case, they feel bad, they feel nervous, they feel they forget this anything, but um, for example, I think that many women uh, have phobias or the most debilitating phobias in this case is animals. For example, many women have phobia rats or different animals, and well, I think that is depend of the life of the past the person, yeah, because any person is different, your situation was different, and I, that's all. I think that.
That's all. Okay, very good. This time you made more logic, which is very good. You talk about also very specific samples and you gave arguments. The thing that I would like you to work on is, as I said to Huli, your problem is not so much as intonation, but something we call the staircase intonation, and that we make it to sound more confident, because well, the type of intonation that you use is sometimes very similar to that of a question. So for example, this woman is scared of rats, and that sounds like a question. Instead, you should say, this woman is scared of rats. You notice how that makes a change of tone in my confidence? So you start right up here with a sentence and then go down. This woman is scared of rats. That's a complete difference. Or if I say this woman is complete of rats, that will be something like an upster intonation, and that tends to sound like a question. So we can make that if we are to make a question. However, when we make a statement, it's important to follow the downster intonation. Okay, we should avoid this. Very good. That was much better, Laura. Now let's go ahead and hear Dania. Please go ahead and speak.
I think trauma becomes from a very strong experience that we we had at some point of our lives. It can be something that we see, we feel, or make us feel disgust. So it's a really strong reaction towards something. I know that the most common phobias are arachnophobia, phobia of heights, and claustrophobia. Arachnophobia is the phobia that you have towards spiders and scorpions. And this is usually because spiders have a lot of eyes and a lot of legs, and they come in different shapes and sizes, and some of them are furry. So the combination of all these biological elements that these animals possess can make people like feel disgust when they see them. So um, plus some of them can be like dangerous. Some of them can be poisonous, and they can inflict in the health of the person. So you have all these physical characteristics that are not pleasant to the eye, and besides that you have the element of the danger that this animal represents depending on where you live. For example, in Australia, Australia is known because it has a lot of many different animals that have very extreme survival mechanisms, and they involve usually venom and poison and physical skills that can attempt towards the human life. Fear of heights, it's usually experienced in two scenarios. You can have this scenario on an airplane, and you can have it on tall buildings. So if you are in a tall building, you can experience the sensation of vertigo. And if you are in the airplane, some of the phobia comes from the fact that the person believes that the airplane can just fall down. But truth be told, airplanes, when they are at the highest height, are way safer than any other mean of transportation. So the real danger is when the airplane is taking off or landing, and that is usually when people tend to not follow the instructions that the flight attendants and the other crew of the airplane is giving. So sometimes we as passengers get angry when a crewmate tell us you have to uh, stand your seat, you have to put your table in the recommended position, you have to turn off your cell phone. Sometimes we think that these are inconveniences, but the truth is that they are taking care of our security, because taking off and landing are the most dangerous parts of the process of traveling via airplane. And the last one that I think that is very common is claustrophobia. Claustrophobia means that you are scared of being retained in small places. And this phobia is usually common in people that suffer some kind of abuse when they were little kids. So if you were a person that um, got confined to a small space for long periods of times, you tend to relate that experience with the fact that you feel um, crowded in a secluded area. Or if someone played a prank on another person when they were really really young, and they spent a lot of time in that secluded area for many hours, maybe people didn't notice. When they are taken out of that place, like, they have all the fear, the trauma, um, post um, post-traumatic stress disorder, and that is something really hard to recover from.
Okay, thank you. Out of your speech, I'd like to talk about some of the transitional words that you used, and is that when we're approaching the end, you used and the last image, and just by saying the last image, you were letting us know that you were approaching the end of your speech, which is amazing. We should always do that. And we have some devices to talk about. Look, I'm approaching to the end of this speech. So I will say, well, lastly, or this last image, there's a word that will always work, depending on whether you're a beginner user or you're an advanced user. And that's finally. When you're approaching to the end of your speech, if you don't know how to end, always use the good old finally. And finally, I think it's important to talk about the mortality rates between driving a car versus going on a plane. And that's how I'm signaling that I'm ending my speech. This is as opposed and that's it. That's it. And I finished. We should try to avoid that, all right? It's better to signal our listener with some kind of device, like Dania said. This last image, that's very good, all right? So let's continue. We're approaching the end of this presentation. This will be the last one. And we're gonna start with Huli, but I just noticed that Huli has a little bit of a disadvantage because she's always starring, and so she doesn't have as much time to think about these images and these questions. So Huli, I'm gonna give you 1 minute to think about that, and you can commence. I'll tell you when to start.
Okay. Okay. I'm
Okay,
ready, teacher.
go ahead.
Okay. I think the other writer the writers choose these scenarios because for it's a environment dark, and this environment produce different feelings, maybe sad feelings. Um, I think it's a good opportunity to writers to write about the situation that produce scare. So it's this is a great um, places that you find out different feelings, uh, mm, bad feelings, in order to produce scared in another people. Um, I think that between cemetery and the forest, dark forest. I think the scariest is cemetery. Cemetery is the scariest. Uh, the old image that I see, the you show us. So because it's an environment that is related the death and maybe maybe the murder, the people died, and it's a situation very cold and the dark and winter. It's possible that it's so for that reason is that environment it's really interested in writers for reading different books and different histories about the skirt. And for me, the most scariest is like a cemetery. And finally, for me, it's not good any image, any situation, and it's because it's so alone, so isolation, and it's a situation uh, that is not good for me.
Very good. You use that finally very well. And I see that you improved a lot from the first slide, so I congratulate you for that, Juli. Now, let's go ahead and go with Dania.
Okay, these are scenes or settings that are very common to see in scary movies. We have an abandoned mansion, we have an asylum, cemetery, a lonely forest, and a carnival. I cannot really recognize the other image. And the mansion, I think they always have this kind of setting because mentions evoke something historical, like something from the past. So they have this eerie sensation that is innate to them, that they are old, that they had been populated but by many people during many years, and there is always like the sensation that since it's not a new place and some people have inhabited this space before, we are not technically alone. Like even if a person don't believe in ghosts or in some kind of apparition after people died, like there is always this sensation that there are the belongings of the people that were previously occupying the space. So you have uh, paintings, you have the old decorations of the household things that belong to them. So they always have like this feeling of being lonely, ancient, that they are eerie, and um, a TV series that I think evokes this sensation very good is Netflix, The Haunting of Hill House, that is about a family that used to live in a mansion similar to this one, and there were a lot of specters and ghosts living in the mansion, and they haunted the family for years. Even after they move out, this family was still haunted not only by the physical things that happened to them in regards to ghosts or apparitions, but also they were haunted by the memories, by the interactions that they had about the house. So every time that this family comes together and talk, it's like they are trapped in the memories of the mansion because they cannot talk about anything else that is not about this topic. The other setting that I found really, really scary is the asylum. We know that asylums have not have a good reputation, especially at the beginning of its conception, because there was not a lot of development towards the understanding of mental illnesses and transtorns and everything that is related to mental health. We know that these spaces were very common to. It was very common to gather a lot of people in these places that were, sorry, disregarded by society, and they were usually tortured, secluded. So we don't only have the sensation that this space was occupied by a lot of people, but we also know that this space was occupied by a lot of people that suffer a lot by the hands of the staff that tended to them daily, like the nurses and the psychiatrists. They were usually, like at the beginning of the asylums, they tended to use people for experiments, and a lot of people suffer a lot because of it. So these are the reasons why I think these two places are the scariest for me personally. But I also have to recognize that cemeteries also have this eerie element, especially if they have like an European decoration, because Europe is such an ancient place. I know that we usually don't think of it that way, but once a person has the opportunity to visit it, like it's such a different sensation watching all the style of architectures. So when we see a cemetery that is decorated in European style, we got the eerie, creepy feeling that this is a very old place and give us the sensation that it is haunted.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And lastly, let's go with Laura. Laura, please go ahead.
Okay. Mm, when someone speaks about these horror books, and many people feel excited because for them it's different thing or then think that is cool. But it's confusing. Some like it or other doesn't like it. And I think that I think these writers should start from right only self, but they don't consider the feelings of people. Yeah. And 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 if we watch this movie, I think that is more is the more scary of this, yeah, the horror house, um, or for example when you are alone in your house you feel scared because you all the time to watch movies about this topic or read the books, always about experience, about different person, about this situation. And that's all.
Okay, so thank you for that. Remember, you should have finished with finally instead of that's all. That's it. That's the only thing I had for you. Now, we can recognize there was a lot of improvement from the previous live in all of you, and I like to share something that Dania was doing, and is that, well, she was able to carry a lot of empathy by talking about her experiences and what she felt towards some of the topics. So keep in mind, girls, to make your listener or your reader feel empathy. Remember, they're humans, and that's gonna give you a better score. So, girls, that will be everything for today. I appreciate your attendance, and have a nice day. Goodbye.
Thank you, teacher.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.